Flames of Chaos might be the most chaotic book I've ever read. I don't understand what's happening in this book. The things the characters say are just like so bizarre. This is gonna make you question everything about yourself, I think. And they all want to breed with her. She takes like a piece of pineapple and she's like, oh, maybe people won't smell me if I like put a piece of pineapple. Like, what is happening? Yeah, I don't know how I feel about this book. Like it's just not, I don't know what was happening. I'm pretty excited to read this book, mostly because my friend who recommended it to me keeps on asking if I've read it yet and that she wants to talk about it. So I got pretty high expectations, I think, for it, just because of like all the recommendations she has given me. I've been absolutely obsessed. Like Shadow Realms was such a hidden gem. And then of course like ACOTAR from Blood and Ash, like all of those classic fantasy books this friend had recommended to me. And so this, I think, is going to be similar to the Shadow Realms, where it might be a hidden gem, and we'll find out. So from my understanding, Flames of Chaos, which is the first book in the Legacy of the Nine Realms series by Amelia Hutchins, follows our main character Aria, and she's a witch. And what happens is that like her sister goes missing, and so she has to go from the witch world to the human world. But the human world is completely different from when she was there last. And now there's this guy named Knox who has basically declared himself kin. And they're kind of like enemies. I don't know if she was supposed to, maybe she's half human, half witch, and maybe she was entitled to the throne and this guy just took it in her absence. But there's some heated enemies to lovers kind of vibes going on, and maybe he knows kind of like what happened with the missing sister. Maybe he stole her sister, I don't know. But that's pretty much all I know. And I think I'm excited because I know there's gonna be magic, there's going to be enemies to lovers, I know there's some pretty good spice in this book, and yeah, I mean, what else can a girl ask for, you know? So yeah, without further ado, let's just crack this book right open. So I'm now a little bit more than 100 pages into Flames of Chaos, and here are my thoughts so far. This book is very crude. I didn't expect that. I think maybe my friend warned me a long time ago, but I didn't remember, because now I kind of remember. But I wish I remembered that, because I wasn't like mentally prepared for the kind of content that's in this book or the kind of language that's constantly being used. I don't understand what's happening in this book. The premise is like, how do I explain this? We have our main character, Aria, and she is from the Hecate line. And in this kind of world, you need somebody from like different types of bloodlines, like wolf bloodlines, vampire bloodlines, like all that good stuff, to be in this town to allow people to go through this kind of like Nine Realms portal. And they kind of act as like a council. And so Aria's twin sister, who part of kind of like her bloodline's kind of like backstory is that every single person in that line has a twin. So she has like a lot of sisters, and they're all twins. It's always sets of twins. And so they all are very close, and they all kind of like go, and they're all looking for her missing sister, because it's on Aria's side that her sister is missing her twin sister. But all the other twins, they have all their kind of like pairs with them. And so they're all kind of trying to look for where she went, and they also have to go back to this area because you need someone from that bloodline there to allow people to pass to and from like these portal things. And when she shows up, she has a very, very like heated, lustful conversation with the guy who's basically proclaimed himself kin of the area, and he's like instantly attracted to her, and she's instantly attracted to him. But the thing is that she's never been attracted to anybody before, which is super, super rare, because this is where that slightly questionable, to me at least, plotline comes in, is that she's a virgin, and so every single person in the realm can smell it, and they all want to breed with her, because like the witches are like every month they breed with people because they need to produce more witches. And so like it's kind of bizarre, because every single person is just like, oh yeah, like we want to be with this girl because she's a virgin, and like it's like the main theme. And I'm like, okay, that's not really what I expected. And the stuff that's happened in this book doesn't really make any sense, but it's like somehow entertaining. Like, you don't know what's gonna happen. Like, you literally have no idea what's going to happen. Like, at one point she takes like a piece of pineapple and she's like, oh, maybe people won't smell me if I like put a piece of pineapple. I'm like, what is happening? But yeah, that's the book so far. Not what I expected. I don't know where it's gonna go, and yeah, we will see. So yeah, Aria is going to continue to look for her lost sister with her sisters, but there's somebody, because of, like I mentioned, because she smells like really, really good, that everybody wants to breed with her. And so the kin guy is keeping her and her sisters in his big mansion. And there's obviously like the tension between her and him. And so she's kind of like exploring the area. And there's a lot of like secrets where he is most likely the same like species that she is, but she doesn't know what her other half is. She only knows that she's half from the Hecate line, but she doesn't know the other half. She just knows that her mom had tried to kill her multiple times because she said that she is evil. So we will see, but there definitely seems to be something kind of there. Yeah, so I'm gonna continue to read Flames of Chaos, and I'll update you around the halfway mark. So I will see you then.
Dark night calls my name, witches dance in flames.
So I'm now a little bit more than halfway through Flames of Chaos, and okay, it's interesting because it's like, this is one of those books that the first half is really bizarre and you don't really know why anything is happening, but then once you hit, I think it was actually the exact halfway point, you're like, oh, that makes sense. And now the story has become actually pretty interesting, not gonna lie, despite how bizarre the first half of this book was. I would say for me, this is definitely one of those books that if I wasn't recommended it, I definitely would have dropped it before the halfway mark, but I didn't. So I kept on persevering, and honestly, it's a lot better now. Like, this book did not need such a long setup, and like, I was just like, Knox gives me the ick, to be honest. Like, I don't like the kind of like bully, abusive kind of vibe that he gives off. Not into that at all. I don't like him. The language in this book is very, very crude. And some things the characters say are just like so bizarre. But despite that, I'm like kind of interested to see where it goes, because like we get this point of view from Knox that kind of reveals why he did all of these things, which reminds me of Kingfisher in Quicksilver, where you're like, why is he treating her like this? It's a very similar thing with Knox. And then you get some of Knox's backstory, and then you get Aria's point of view again, but then you also get a different part of Aria's point of view, I guess is the best way to put it, which is the interesting part of this book, because nobody knows what the other half of Aria is. They just know that her mom had tried to kill her, told her she's a monster, like all of this stuff. And it's getting interesting, not gonna lie. If I was an editor of this book, I would have just like chopped out like the majority of that beginning of the book and then started it way sooner in this part, because this is the part that I find interesting and I want to know what happens, even though I'm like, this is gonna be such a weird book to rate. I don't even know if I'll be able to rate it, to be honest. But yeah, it's getting interesting. It's gory at times, it's explicit at times, it's crude at times, but there's just so much always happening, like just so much that it's like, oh, what's gonna happen now? What's gonna happen now? What's gonna happen now? So yeah, I don't know how I feel about this book, but I'm not dropping it, so I don't know. We'll see. I'm like kind of interested and I want to know what happens. So yeah, I'm at a loss of words, to be honest. So I'm going to continue to read this book and I'll update you when I finish it with my final thoughts. So maybe I'll have a clearer kind of perspective on what I actually think about this book, because when I started it, I was like, I don't really like it. But now I'm like, I don't know if I really like it, but I'm kind of like, I kind of like it. And I want to know what happens and I'm like invested, and I don't know. But yeah, I'll see you when I finish the book. So I will see you then. So I just finished reading Amelia Hutchins' Flames of Chaos, which is the first book in the Legacy of the Nine Realms. And this was a ride. This is the hardest book that I've ever had to like rate. I still don't know how I'm gonna rate this, but let's kind of like debrief here. The first half of this book is not good. It's not. It doesn't make any sense. Nothing makes sense. Things are happening and there's always something happening, but when you think about it, like it's just not, I don't know what was happening. However, once you get past that, the first half of the book, it actually gets really interesting, and there's like plot, and you know the direction where the book is going to go, and kind of all of that. Like personally, I think that this book could have just chopped in half and just start with the other half, and that would have made it a much better read. However, once I did get to that kind of half part, I did start enjoying the book a lot more. Like, I don't really care too much about Aria's character, to be honest, but I am really interested about the creature within her. Like, what is that? I like that we still don't know what that creature is and how it's part of her, but she also doesn't know at the same time. Like, she can see it do stuff, but she can't control it yet. And so I think that that's really, really cool. And I love kind of like that dual perspective. It's kind of like in One Dark Window when Elspeth and the Nightmare are kind of like one and the same, but also not. And so I really like that kind of vibe. I love when books have that, but her character was very immature, and I don't know what it is about this book, but it's so crude, and the language is just like, it's very explicit. It's very vulgar, and that's not really my favorite kind of thing. I don't really like that kind of language, but it kind of tapers off a little bit, or I get used to it, I guess, by the halfway point of this book. So yeah, that was interesting. But the spice in this book, the spice is real good. It's like high level spice. However, I have a lot of like moral issues with Knox and Aria's kind of like relationship, because like he's just so toxic. He's so toxic. He's so like, ugh, I don't like him. He gives me the ick. But I like that Aria stands up for herself, and she's like, you know what, like, I don't like this guy, but they have a good time together, if you catch my drift. And so she likes that part. And I like that she's not like, oh yeah, like this guy's like perfect. She's like, no, this guy sucks, but I like this part about him. And he's very conflicted because he does actually like her as a person, but he also doesn't at the same time, because he feels like it's ruining the memory of his wife and mate who is not around anymore. And so I wonder if maybe Aria is like a reincarnation of her. I'm not sure, but I think that it's really interesting. But it's like them together, I just do not like it. And like morally, I don't like it. But when I'm reading it, I'm like, it's pretty good. It's like Haunted Adeline, where you know it's not right. You know that the morality to it just is not good, but you can't not watch it. You can't not read it. You can't take your eyes away from it. You have to just see what happens. And that's this book. This is gonna make you question everything about yourself, I think. I think it did a good job though when it came to like what consent and not consent is, because with Knox, it is consent. It is very like hardcore stuff that they do, but when Aria's in like the prisons and stuff, you really see the difference between like someone who's very like dominant and takes control and wants what they want, but there's consent in that, whereas in the prison kind of scene that happened, you could see the difference. And there's definitely like a lot of trigger warnings, I would say, for this book, because it is very graphic and very disturbing at times and very bizarre at times. But again, it's like you can't look away. You need to find out what happens. It's that morbid curiosity that keeps you wanting to know what happens. And the writing itself is pretty solid. I would say the dialogue itself is a little bit strange at times. And I'm like, what? No one would actually say this. But I think the writing itself is pretty decent. There's definitely some repetitive aspects to it that could be removed, but overall, like, it captures you and it keeps you there, and you can't put it away. You have to keep on going. And so I like that part. Definitely a very bizarre book though. It's very chaotic. But I really like the way that this book had set up what the second book is going to be like. It's kind of given A Court of Mist and Fury vibes about what's gonna happen with that. I like that Aria is kind of outsmarting the bad guys and stuff. I think that that's really cool. I do really kind of like this world that has been created with the 9 realms and how there's all these different realms and there's like the witches and like all of this history to it that I think is really, really well done. And I do want to read the second book, oddly enough. I think that if I only read half of this book, I would not read the second book. But like I said, the last half of this book is actually pretty decent. So yeah, I'm going to read the second book. So today we are going to be awarding Flames of Chaos a total of 3 stars. Yeah, I know, I'm surprised too. I'm very surprised. I was like, is it 2.5 stars? It's like between 2.5 and 3 stars because like I really did not like the first half of this book. It was, yeah, we've talked about that enough. But the last half of this book I did really like. So it's really weird. It's very chaotic, but it's like interesting and it's very entertaining and it's gonna make you question your morals and if you like spice. It's a very spicy book. And it's very graphic and gory. It's very different, I would say. Like, I would probably have to classify it more under like a dark romance than like a regular romantasy just because of like the themes and all of that. Like, it definitely is more like Haunted Adeline, in my opinion, because of those very similar dark, graphic themes and constantly questioning your morality because you're like, what is wrong with this Knox guy? Like, come on. And then just some of the stuff that happens, especially with the Minotaurs, like, excuse me? That was strange. And really hard to read at times. But I don't know, I think it's nice to just kind of expand your horizons, read something that you don't usually read. Yeah, and it was recommended to me, so yeah, that's Flames of Chaos. So the next book that I'm going to be reading is Shark Heart by Emily Habeck, and I'm really excited about this book. One of my friends recommended this to me. I know, lots of recommendations that I'm reading this time around. And I have not heard anything bad about this. The premise itself is interesting. It's a newlywed couple where the husband is slowly turning into a great white shark and how they have to kind of deal with that terminal illness. And so it sounds really interesting. I'm really excited about it, so that's what I'm going to be reading next. So if you're interested in watching me read Shark Heart or any other book that happens to be on my never-ending TBR, for whatever reason, I will be reading at some point the second book in the Legacy of the 9 Realms. I still feel like 3 stars is too high to give it, but we're giving it honorary 3 stars. I'm just like thinking about it still. Yeah, if you're interested in watching me read any of those books, definitely hit the subscribe button if you haven't already and turn on the bell notification. That way you get notified anytime a new video comes out. If you enjoyed this video, definitely hit the like button and let me know in the comments, what is the most chaotic book you have ever read? And do you think it's similar to the one that I just read? Love to know. So with that, I'm gonna wish you warm wishes and fish kisses and I will see you in the next video. Bye.